Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. And to my regular listeners, I have a treat for you. We are somewhat venturing out of our normal lane, and we are getting some damn good financial advice today. I have a guy named Steve Selengut who wrote a book titled Retirement Money Secrets. And I want to tell you now, as business owners, I know the majority of people that tune into the show are former athletes and current business owners, or people looking to make that transition from athletic playing career to how they can kind of manage their business. This is some absolutely vital information that you're going to get. You're not too young to start thinking about how you're going to spend your money, where you're going to put your money, all that stuff. So we're going to dive into all that today. So with all that, Steve Selengut, welcome to the Move Swiftly podcast. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, and let's just dive into it because I was listening to you by the way, guys, we're recording this on a Monday, so I had a ton of time yesterday, actually on Sunday, to really listen to several of the shows that you've been on. And one of the things that actually struck me, because we sort of live in a world where we're not taught this financial advice in the school, right? If you want to learn
Right.
this, a lot of it comes from the home, and you actually had a father that taught you a lot about this stuff. So I think the best place to start off is kind of just speak a little bit about your childhood, some of the things that he taught you in regards to investing and how you were able to just develop the mindset and be cognizant of, it's important to know where you put.
Sure, sure. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of income generated by my father's business. He was a real estate developer. He owned a lot of real estate. He had rental properties. He had a lumber yard. He had insurance stuff going on. He'd take
Renaissance
back,
man.
you know, um, quite a what they call it in economics, a vertically integrated business that he had.
Yeah.
But he always led us, my brother and I, led us to understand that it wasn't necessarily like the stock market at all, where you'd focus on the value of the properties
Mhm.
going up and down and trading them, although he did that. It was more about the income that all of his different um, parts of his organization would be generating that allowed him to go buy another piece of property, that
Mhm.
allowed him to take my mother on expensive vacations, that allowed him to do this and that
Mhm.
without having to sell things to do it. So
Mhm.
his emphasis always to us was, yeah, you don't do anything that doesn't pay you something for the use of your money, the use of your time, you
Mhm.
know, the same thing. So it gets you into a different place in investing. So you're not there saying, okay, I'm going to talk to my broker. He's going to tell me what's hot. I'm going to give him some money and we're going to hope
Mhm.
that this one goes up. But the broker's never going to tell you to sell it when it's up, you know? Whereas what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for a solid company that's making money already, um, that's been in business for a long time, that does something that doesn't offend me,
Right.
and so on. And that is understanding enough or respectful enough of having the use of my money to give me dividends.
Right.
That's how I started. So I'd never ever bought a stock that didn't pay a dividend.
Mhm.
Even when I started early. I was fortunate, very fortunate, and I was able to start investing at the ripe old age of 25.
Mhm.
Um, and I set my sights on that income focus.
Right.
My mindset was if you've got quality companies, I think most of the companies that I owned were in the Dow Jones 30, the higher quality dividend paying companies, long, well-known names. Everybody understands. That's what it mostly was. So I didn't have a fear that IBM was going out of business. I didn't worry about GM. I didn't have to lose sleep at nights
Mhm.
like you would with something like a brand new NVIDIA when it first came on the market. Who knew,
Yeah.
right?
So in many ways, you kind of debunk this myth that it's kind of out there, or kind of a understanding that investments is going to require huge risk. which is why, when it comes to the way the system teaches things and where they're sort of pointed in the direction is go get a stable job. People that approach you about selling stuff, they're kind of turned off because they kind of associate risk with investing in stocks and things like that. But you just said you made sure things had a proper amount of income. How do you teach people to do that? How do you teach people to,
Uh,
how do you strip down that myth and say, hey, look, it's not going to be about taking risks. It's going to be about, first of all, caring enough about your future, but then knowing your numbers, knowing what to look for and what's going to be the income. So how do you, coach people through that?
well, it's interesting because that's what my coaching business is.
Yeah.
First step um, is do what I do, a QDI plus PT analysis.
Okay.
Qu- quality, quality, what's inside that portfolio, how well its diversification is the D, how well it's diversified inside. Is there too much money in one thing or another? Um, is it producing adequate income? Most of the portfolios I see generate less than 3% income when my portfolio is generating almost 10, you know? And the third thing is profit taking. And when you can look at a portfolio, you can instantly tell if they ever take profits or not. I've seen things where a person will have, oh, well, I'll use IBM again,
Yeah.
where he's got, three-quarters of his money is in his IBM stock from when he was employed with them. And he
Mm-hmm.
is great as great a company it is. I can think back to times when it actually lost its A rating and went down to a B minus rating at one time and dropped to over 40, only $40 a share, in
Right.
years ago. So you don't want all your money in one place. So when I see that, I kind of figure out the guy's got a lot of unrealized gains in his portfolio. He hasn't been taking his profits. But those are the four things that in actuality minimize the risk. Quality, less likely to go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Diversification, less likely to have a big portfolio damaging event if one company does go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Income, you don't have to sell securities to take care of your expenses. And
Mm-hmm.
profit taking, how many market crashes have you been through? You've probably seen the dot-com bubble
Yes,
back.
I'll tell you, man. So I'm born in 1989, and I jokingly tell people, I thought that those Apple computers that had the blue thing, I thought that that was a big deal. So now, being 35 now, and we have these, these things that have everything. I've seen
Right.
a
The-
lot of growth, and actually, one of the things I did want to get to, I'm glad you asked me this now, is I actually just started investing in mutual funds myself. And what I was actually just telling my broker or the person that signed me up with Prime America was I want to figure out the companies that do tech. I want to put my money in AI and stuff like that. So to answer your question, it's probably just the internet in general got me interested in wanting to learn as much as I can about
yeah.
this topic as I possibly can. So,
Do you know you young guys, young people don't realize
right.
that I have in my hand you ever hear of the Encyclopedia Britannica
I have,
from
yes.
way back? I've got everything that's in any public library anywhere.
Yeah,
I've got all the knowledge of the world in my hand.
right.
We used to wear backpacks full of our books
Yeah,
and stuff
textbooks,
when we
all
used
that,
to
right.
went to school. You'd have to this way, you got a question, you got the answer.
Mm-hmm.
you know so it's really a different environment, and it's pretty much the same in the financial services industry. You can get all the details about an
Uh-huh.
investment that you want. I do the investing part itself differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you say you want to be an AI, you got to realize that, yeah, you got Nvidia that's up there, a couple $1 trillion net worth today, but who knows if it's going to be there 10 years from now.
Right,
But you have to realize that there are probably 30 other AI companies that have gone out of business already.
right,
You
because
know,
they tried. Yeah,
they
and that's why,
tried,
like, the
right? So, but
question,
and when you start, you don't know which one's which.
right.
So if you can find a way to be exposed to AI
Mm-hmm.
without trying to pinpoint which ones are going to be the winners.
Yeah.
That's what I developed. Not what I developed, but I discovered when I
Mhm.
discovered these closed-end funds,
Yeah, that's what you're
which
talking because the
you've heard
first
me
part,
talk.
not to cut you off, but the first part in which you mentioned, which is the QDI, the quality
Yeah.
of it, you have that, but then you turn it into like a closed ends fund. So in other words, you're able to get control of where your money goes, and you're able to, if you want to pull out, or basically you said you don't want your money all in just one place, but you're able to balance it out because of the closed ends fund. So I'd love for you to please, details,
Okay. So yeah.
walk us through that.
Well, closed-end fund in risk prevention is just like your mutual funds or your ETFs,
Hmm.
because you'll have a closed-end fund that's focused on AI, for example,
Yeah.
but it'll own 50, 60, 70 different companies. If you have an closed-end fund in healthcare, it'll contain 300 different companies,
Hmm.
or if it's in the energy sector, huge numbers. There aren't a huge number of AI companies yet. So right now it would be a smaller number, but still the professional manager who's watching it is obviously looking at all these quality factors and business plans and all this other stuff.
Right.
So he's going to have a well-diversified portfolio. So you can get started even if you're the first investment you ever make. I want to be in AI. Fine. Don't try to pick a winner. Buy a closed-end fund for $15 a share that owns 60 potential winners. And
Hmm.
as we've seen, you only need one that gets like a NVIDIA, and
Right.
that whole portfolio will go up to the point where you're going to benefit too. But in the meantime, the closed-end fund is buying, selling, trading, collecting dividends, and sending them back to you, because closed-end funds are trusts and they have to give back to their shareholders 95% of their income.
Wow.
Mutual funds don't have to give you anything. They don't have to. They
That
do.
is,
Most of them do a little bit.
yeah, that
And
is.
ETFs the same. They don't have to give it back. Closed-end funds have to. So,
So sort of, speak to the people that don't have necessarily a background or understanding of how to even take that first step. And what you just said is that's actually was a great an insight for me in regards to where I should be focusing my AI, like my energy and things like that, is to kind of look to the closed ends funds. But I've already come to you with the questions, and I want to know and I want to learn this stuff. So,
okay.
but talk to the people that are maybe considering getting into investing. They may be, tired of their job, or they may be a lot of the listeners to the show, like I said, are transitioning into a brand new world. And these kinds of openings or these kinds of tactics can be actually life-changing for them. What would you say a first step for them would be when we're
I
talking specifically closed-end funds?
Oh, we'll close it.
Yeah.
Once you know about it, you should first of all you ought to make sure you got to know the difference between a stock and a bond.
Uh,
Or what is a mortgage? What does
yeah.
it really represent? What's really going on there? You need to know what these securities are all about. When you own a stock,
Right.
it's just like if your brother-in-law said, "Come on, I'm going to create a pizza parlor here, and I want you to go in half. You can own 50% of the company." You
Mhm.
know, you're
Right.
going to own 50%, but how likely is it that
That it
that
actually makes a
pizza
profit.
parlor is going to make it?
Not very
So
likely.
okay, so when you own a stock, you
Mhm.
own a share of stock, you own a piece of the action. You own part of the profits.
Mhm.
Whether or not they give them to you is another story. But if they go under, your shares are worth. Merrill Lynch
Mhm.
in the financial crisis. Merrill Lynch, one of the biggest, if not the biggest brokerage firm
Mhm.
in the world,
Right.
went bankrupt. Went bankrupt. The shareholders lost everything. The bondholders got back maybe 25% on the dollar. And Bank America bought it all up, and there it is, running along nice and smoothly all over again
Right.
under the shell of Bank of America,
So yeah, yeah, I
you
did see.
know. But the shareholders of Merrill Lynch, and that's a big company. Look at the stuff that happened back in that little, what they called the Great Recession, that little financial crisis there. A lot of banks went under. uh, and quite a few companies. But for the most part, closed-end funds didn't go under because Merrill Lynch was only one of the stocks they owned. Now, if they were a closed-end fund that focused on the banking sector and they owned Merrill Lynch and Lehman Brothers and a couple of the banks that went under, yeah, it still wouldn't have gone bankrupt, but it still would have, felt the pain. But
Yeah.
all the other ones didn't feel any pain from the financial crisis. I didn't. I certainly didn't. I had in a couple stock portfolios. I had some Lehman Brothers and I had some Merrill Lynch, but
Right.
in many with different clients and on my own. But I never owned more than 1 or 2% of my portfolio in any one security. Even then, when I was investing in individual stocks. Today, I don't own anything but closed-end funds, and I still don't own more than I not one closed-end fund comprises more than 2% of my portfolio.
Mhm.
But the idea that when you're first getting started, you got to recognize that there is a financial risk in ownership,
Mhm.
and you got to be careful who you loan money to. I mean, you grew up with 20 friends, let's say,
Mhm.
and if I said to you, which one of those guys would you not lend money to, you'd say, well, him, and him.
Blank,
The
but
other
I
guy,
have them
right?
right in
The other
front of me.
guys I
To name
trust.
their
Well, it's the
names if I
same
want
thing. You're handing your money over to a company, a business,
to.
and you just have to understand something about that business and what it does before you give them your money. So that's a basic common sense just from even friendship. Before you invest, find out what it is you're doing. What's the quality of that entity or that person?
Mhm.
That's the quality aspect. Um, understand the second thing you have to understand is you don't want to throw it all in one place. That's the diversification element. If
Mhm.
I'm going to invest, and this is my first time, I got 10 grand. My rich uncle gave me 10 grand. He said, now you can start an investment portfolio.
Mhm.
You don't take that 10 grand
Oh,
and
my friend,
put it into that pizza parlor.
right.
You take, okay, I'm going to spread that out.
Mhm.
I'm going to put $1,000 in 10 different things.
Right.
It's easier if you just studied closed-end funds and bought
Mhm.
a couple of them. So something like that. Or even mutual funds. Put it in a mutual fund. At least you know you
Right.
diversified. Buy
Right.
a few ETFs
Right.
and get your feet wet and understand how prices go up and down. And you can't predict where they're going. Even though you want to believe that who's the guy on TV that jumps up and down all the time and tells everybody what to buy? Jim Cramer. Cramer?
That's it. Is it
You
Kramer?
know?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, Kramer. Well,
Make sure.
he's a
Right.
good guy and he's a smart guy and he knows what he's talking about. But even he can't tell you, if he says go out and invest in this,
That's it.
he doesn't mean put all your money in that thing
Mhm.
because it may be a good investment, but he doesn't want you to put all your money into it either. You know, you got to diversify. And I attach, and that's pretty much the bottom core basics that you got to do before you even put your penny down or call your broker and tell them to get you something. You gotta you gotta be able to understand quality and diversification. Now I add to that
Mhm.
income. I insist on income, and that's been in my blood all my life. Right? We talked about
And
that.
I'd love for you to clarify this because you had already mentioned your mortgage. Can you clarify if a house is an investment, buying a house is an investment, or is it a liability? Is it something that is
Eh,
going to be because there's confusion in that. There's massive confusion
oh wow, yeah.
when it comes
Well,
to that. So please talk us through it. And I heard I
okay.
you said
I
about it.
guess in my experience, I'm almost 80, so I've owned houses since we were 25,
Yeah.
and probably one, two, three, four. We're in our fifth.
Wow.
Okay, and if I were to sell today, it will be five straight that I will have made money on. But but I've replaced roofs. I've fixed plumbing. I've had gardeners, landscapers. I've had to redo driveways. A house is a real estate investment in your own home. I would call an asset,
Mm-hmm.
but not a not-for-profit asset. It's going to cost you money from
Mm-hmm.
the mortgage, that you owe the bank, right down to painting it every if you buy one that's old, you're going to be painting it right away, or
Hmm.
soon enough. You're going to have problems with something. Something's always going wrong. I mean, my daughter just had to replace her refrigerator because it conked out on her, and she's only been in place for 4 years. She bought it. So yeah, it's a great asset in the long haul. It's almost your your typically real estate always increases in value over the years, but you can't spend, again, it's like a stock that grows every year and doesn't produce any income. Your house doesn't produce a penny of income for you, not a cent, unless you rent out parts of it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so don't think of it as wealth. And because in order to monetize it, you have to sell it.
Right.
And typically, if you sell it for a large sum of money, all those other places that you're going to go to try to replace it with are going to also be gone up. The
Right.
only time you can really make out, most people don't sell a house and downsize until they get to be my age. They
Hmm.
want something better and something
Right.
nicer. So they're not going to make a lot of money in the switching of
Right.
houses. When you get to be in my age, theoretically, and your kids sell your home and put you in the loony bin or the old age home, then
Right.
they make some money.
Okay. Okay. But
Just
I
about.
mean, you don't look at all like you're 80 years old. I'll tell you that. But I'm glad you clarified that because there is very much massive confusion. A lot of people think they're in a home, all of a sudden that's gonna eventually make them money. But then, like you said, there's the repairing, there's
Yeah.
the fact the fridge may go, there's weather, there's so many things that go into it.
Right.
So when
Right.
you're, I want to make sure we touch on the some of the concepts and the principles that you talk about in your book when it comes
Yeah.
to, specifically retirement money secrets. Where exactly do you advise? Let's just kind of pretend there's a young person listening in now that's focused and they're maybe working their first job, or they're trying to figure out entrepreneurship. Where's the first thing that you let them know? Do you tell them, look, maybe go into an apartment for a little bit? Do you tell them, how do you advise, kind of walk us through some of the clients
Well,
that you've had, and I think
it,
that you'll
it,
get a lot of
if
value from
if you can start off with owning your own house,
that. Hmm.
it's not a bad idea because you don't pay rent that way.
Right.
And
It's
if you
going
rent,
to, and that's something my sister did. That's why I'm so cognizant. My sister was able to get in a house at 25, and she actually told me directly, look, you get into a house, you're not paying rent. That's actually going towards an ownership, and you're young enough to make
right, you're
making those moves. So I like you was blessed enough to be around a family that at least made me very aware and very financially conscious, and just being cognizant
yeah,
of these things. So it's a
yeah.
blessing. And that's actually a lesson for you listeners out there as well. If you are raising young people, if you are in the adult in the situation, even if you don't consider yourself an expert in finances as it is, make sure you're just at least educating your young people that they exist and be cognizant of it. Because I cannot tell you the amount of mistakes I've made when I got my first job. I jokingly tell her every 2 weeks I go buy a hat, I go buy some Jordans, I buy so much shit that
The Jordans, yeah.
money based on money. When I look at my 35-year-old self now and I'm like, Tar, I wish I would have done this. But again, that's just part of kind of the process of growing up. So I'll give you the floor a little bit.
35 was that's just about the age
Mhm.
where I decided that I was able
Mhm.
to leave my job in New York City
There you go.
because I was my this investing thing that I was doing for myself, this profit taking, this income generation and all that
All right.
had I was like at 4 or 5 times my salary.
Uh,
And I said, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up at 5 in the morning to get on this bus
right.
to go to Manhattan and then not knowing when I'm going to get home at night because of the traffic and stuff? Why am I still doing this when they're paying me nothing? And so I put my business sense on, and I said, okay, I can do this for others. What do I have to do
That bus ride,
legally
I
to?
have to ask, were you saving on a car note?
I was a car note.
Did you
I,
have a
I
car? You
I
were
had a
you
car, but I didn't. No,
yeah,
I had mostly older used cars first
Was
and then I,
not paying a car note, listeners. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
yeah.
He was saving. He was tripling his salary by not paying a car note. I just got it out there
Well,
for you guys.
I tripled my salary by by those things we talked about,
Yep.
quality and
Mhm.
diversification and the income,
Right.
and by profit taking in a market, in an economy. I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I mean, think of where the economy was then and how it's grown since then. You know, a lot of us, people in my age group, really benefited from that.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of us actually got paid good salaries. I didn't, but many people that I graduated
Yeah.
college with did fine with their employers and went all the way to vice president. I didn't get there,
Right.
but I was president of my company.
Hmm.
Instantly, all I had to do is fill out the
Founder,
paperwork.
creator, president, whatever title he needed to be to
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
sell.
yeah. So I think when you're young, if you can get into a small home ownership situation as opposed
Yeah.
to just keep paying rent and rent and rent,
Hmm.
and you can afford to pay the mortgage, geez, if you could have done it in the last few years before interest rates went back up and you were, back in the day when I was growing up, 35 years ago, um, when you were just getting started, interest rates were never less than
Wow.
5% ever. I mean,
I,
we had double digit interest rates some years in the 80s,
yeah.
and
I
then
mean,
you had that whole
those were days
15-year
I guess I
period that you could have gotten a mortgage at around 3%.
yeah,
Wow.
I can't say I missed those days because I was too young. But when I hear folks like you talk about,
Yeah,
I'm at the point
wow.
where, man, $10 filled up my gas tank.
Oh, I remember waiting in line for gas at 25 cents a gallon.
25 cents. Yeah.
That's a
That was
gallon. Yeah.
good.
Of
That was a good time.
course, $100 was a lot of money in those days. You
100
know.
bucks is a lot of money.
So,
So.
okay. I don't. Where were we before we went back into the
Yeah,
past?
we were. I want to make sure. Well, I do want to make sure I give you the opportunity to talk a lot about, or talk a little bit about the book, Retirement Money Secrets. What's sort of the takeaway when people get it, and who are you looking to serve when it comes to
Well,
the book and
well,
things
the
like
book does, even though it's really designed to get the attention of people that have, six figures
that.
in
Hmm.
their investment portfolio home. They're in their 50s or so, and the thought of retirement has entered their brain cells occasionally.
Hmm.
Those are the people it's really addressed to. But I discuss the same fundamentals within the book that I would if I were teaching a freshman in college
Hmm.
class on investing. I mean, you need to, regardless of how old or what you're doing, you need to know the basics. You need to have it. You need to know what to expect from a financial advisor. Most people, a lot. Well, I've been in touch with a lot of people lately who do it themselves, and they're pretty good at it,
Hmm.
better than their financial advisors are.
I got you.
Because the financial advisors can't. You can't really run a financial advisory practice and and really be um, closely attentive to every individual's needs when you have 1,000 customers.
Right.
I even when we had 130 customers, I mean there were three people involved with running those portfolios.
Hmm.
To get the stuff that I wanted to do done. To look inside all the time and figure out where the profits were and so forth.
And that
So
helps. Well, that helps people when it's not as many, right? Like because you have make sure you're focusing on the individual client.
yeah, yeah. So what's wrong with what a problem that most financial advisors have is they're asked to run a lot of money for a lot of different people all the time. So consequently, they're forced to use things like model portfolios, is what they call them, or a collection of mutual funds and ETFs,
Yep.
um, stuff like that. And they don't they do things automatically that I wouldn't think of doing automatically. They
Right.
automatically reinvest dividends into the same companies
Because of the
instead of selectively
yeah.
reinvesting like I do. They rarely take profits for two reasons.
Hmm.
A professional, if he takes a profit for you, if he sells your NVIDIA, and you take 100% profit, which you probably could have right now, and that thing goes up another 50%, you could sue them.
Hmm.
You took it too soon. You lost me this money. So,
Wow.
so if financial, I mean, they used to tell us,
Hmm.
you know, unless you absolutely have the in writing from your clients that you can trade, that you can take the profits when you want to take them, don't do it
Hmm.
until they tell you to. So, so that's one of the reasons that they don't take profits because
Man.
they're afraid. They're afraid to take profits.
Yeah, that you just taught me something. That's serious because you're right. If it only goes up, and the thing is, what I'm thinking, if someone doesn't know this, they wouldn't have they would have never known that. They might have,
Right.
it's like, okay, I got the profit, it made money, but they would have never thought to themselves, okay, what if it goes up 50% as opposed to 10% or whatever, and I got out or I got the money. I'm happy with whatever I got. I'm happy I made money, but am I thinking in terms of what if it grew even further? Now we
Right.
got problems.
Right.
You
So
can
that,
get away with that kind of stuff with like regular, like folks that don't know. You can get away with that kind of stuff all day.
yeah. And the other thing is, of course, they get paid on the amount of market value, not on the amount of income that you get. The amount
Uh,
of market value, AUM, amount under management,
yeah.
assets under management is how they get paid. That's where their percentage comes from. There are no commissions anymore.
Hmm.
So, so that also keeps them focused on the stock market
Mhm.
instead of bonds, because bonds aren't designed to go up in price like that.
Right.
That's not what they're there for. They're there to pay income. So, so that there's they're not bad people at all. They just are strapped. You know, most clients go into the stock market thinking about it just like they think about Atlantic City or Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
Gambling.
place my bets. Commentators
Mhm.
talk about betting all the time.
Yeah.
It makes me pull my
We're
hair out.
talking
As you
about
can
that on
tell,
the
I'm
show.
leaving. So, it's crazy, but that's the way they want you to think about the market for
Yeah. Mm.
some reason as a
Right.
gambling device. It doesn't have to be.
It
It
doesn't. It
can you
doesn't.
can make it you can make it relatively safe.
Mhm.
You can get to a point where it doesn't really matter whether the market goes up or down,
Mhm.
whether interest rates go up or down. You're prepared for either thing. You understand it. You've got this core quality.
Mhm.
Um, you just don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about the market going down because your securities, which own hundreds and hundreds of companies, unless the total economy goes to zero,
Right.
it's not going to impact you.
It's crazy too because so much of this show it's about mindset and creating a mindset to a person that wants to be productive. And for you listeners that are tuning in, when it comes to your finances and your investments, the mindset should not be, as he just said, should not be, I'm going to Atlantic City. I'm just going to place my bets because it seems like it's productive. No, your mindset needs to be, I want an absolute. There's not I want an absolute way to see income as opposed to, okay, maybe I might make some money or maybe I not. That should not be the mindset when you're parting ways with your finances. I'm telling you, that is important. I'm glad you brought it up. That you're right. We're pointed in this direction, like ESPN Bet or Atlantic City, where that's the way you think about your
Mhm.
investments. And I guess there's people in your industry who profited from that way of thinking because they could
Oh
just,
yeah,
they could be that person to say, okay, look, I'll take care of it, and if it makes right,
right.
and some
Or
people
they
don't want to do their homework; they just want to throw their money into it. They have it, so hey, I'm gonna spend it, and if it makes, it makes. If it's not, that's
and
what the expert told me. Type.
back in the day, my
Mhm.
the guy I started working through as the stockbroker I started working
Yeah.
through tells a story when he first got started in the business. The whoever was running the office would come out to all the new brokers
Mhm.
and, okay, guys, this is the stock of the day. I want you to make all the phone calls, and
It's
this
like
is
that
the
Wolf of
stock.
Wall Street.
This is the stock and you didn't know anything about what that stock was. You didn't check its quality. It could
Wow,
have been a new issue. It could have been anything, but
wow.
you just went out and sold it. And
And,
that's the way it was initially. Of course, and that was a commission-based time,
yeah.
but it was amazing. The stock of the day. He's telling me the story about it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
That's
What you
that takes me back to Wolf of Wall Street,
there you go.
just ram it down their throat, ram it down their throat. I,
Yeah.
I was inspired by that movie, by the way, but it was more sort of a mindset, how we can build it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to that.
You're not going to find anyone out there that's going to sit you down when you come to him to be in his that is going to say, we're going to develop a plan here and we're going to generate enough income
Yeah.
to cover all your expenses. Nobody is ever going to say that.
Nobody's doing that because that
Nobody's.
doesn't lead to their bottom. That doesn't lead to necessarily the
Yeah,
money for
it
them.
doesn't help.
And it's
When
all boils down to common sense, folks. You really got to get a hold of this. I cannot tell you the importance of this because, again, as former athletes, and let's say you were good enough to play professionally. You signed a contract that gave you a $50 million. It is you guys are like prime prospects when it comes to the folks. You're 18 years old. You have a contract that's worth $100 million or $50 million, whatever it is. You guys are the people that are just trusting. You're signing your name to checks and all that. You're trusting whoever. But when you get a hold of the mindset of make sure the income is coming in before, that is when you're actually going to be creating what I like to call generational wealth. Your people, your young people are going to be able to eat. You're going to have money taken care of your
right,
years upon years upon years, as opposed to running into some shark and that's it. It's
right.
gone.
Yeah, I mean, if you have that type of situation, I didn't have that type of situation. But
Very
let's just
simple, by the way. Yeah.
take this situation of even if it's look, listen to this statement.
Yeah.
If it's as little as $5 million,
Little, right?
think in
Little. That's a good.
think in terms of that 5 million today
Mm-hmm.
using, let's say, 250 different closed-end funds
Was that right?
could be generating you $450,000 a year, $400,000 a year in income that you can go right out and spend.
Yeah. I
And you don't have to sell anything. It doesn't decrease your bank balance or anything like that. And
that's
you're and after a while, you're not going to spend that much anymore. I mean, initially when you the Jordans and the stuff like that, when you get all that,
what. Yeah.
when you get all that, then you're going to say, wait a minute, I'm just throwing this away now.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I had to learn the hard way. Just a bunch of shit that you pay for, like shirts and all that, means nothing
Yeah,
by it. That when you that concept, that principle, man, and I'll tell you, and I want to be respectful of your time, so I'll close you out soon. But I want to make sure that idea of putting your money into something and then seeing it grow, when that happens, when that revelation actually happens, there's nothing stopping you when you had the mindset of going and buying Jordans and buying, clothes and stuff like that, and then you flip it to, let's say, buy some sort of stock or buy some mutual, something that was going to actually sell. Like even my books, when I put my book out, something that you created that's actually making me money, you don't go back to the way you thought before. I'm telling you from experience because
yeah,
you get paid from your own thoughts and your own products. It's like, why am I even considering spending money on stuff that's not going to be making me money? And your entire life changes in that moment. It actually changes in that moment. It really does.
you can for sure.
So with all that, Steve, like I said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell people what's next, where they can get your book, how they can get in touch with you?
Okay.
What would be the best ways of working with you? Because I'm sure for a fact there going to be a ton of people that say, man, I gotta pick your brain on a lot of this stuff.
Well, the book is Retirement Money Secrets,
Right.
and it's available any place you buy books. It's now available in audiobook as well.
Hmm.
And I think Amazon is running a special on that. I think you can probably get it for nothing if you become a member of Audible or whatever it is. I'm not sure.
Let's test
Um,
that out now, man. I'm putting my books on Audible as like literally as we speak too. So
yeah.
kind of in this.
So that's where you get it. It talks about a Facebook group I have that answers questions. People answer questions
Mhm.
of book readers. Book group people read the book. They get support by this Facebook group. Has a lot of investors who are doing it this way and can help them. And I have a website called theincomecoach.net where they can see what I have to offer in the way of coaching.
One credit. Yep. I saw one credit, so
There it is.
there we go. There it
You
is.
got a credit so you could get it for free? Is that it? I don't know how
Yeah.
it works.
All
I
right,
know
so
I haven't been
member.
it.
I'm a member of Audible, so I get a new credit every month. So I
Uh-huh.
gotta wait till the 20th of every month. Narrated by Matthew Spar. Yep, there you go. It's there, folks. It's there. Get a hold of it. It is costs you pretty much nothing in terms of what you're gonna learn from it. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, like exactly. I mean, if it costs you $20 for the paperback, you
Hmm.
know, you're gonna earn you're
You're
gonna
gonna
take care of that with your first one. You know what I mean?
exactly. It's
So
nothing.
yeah, so that's it. The
Now, are you still
incomecoach.net.
actively coaching clients? Are you still active doing that? Or
I just started that business last May. So
oh,
I'm into my second year already now.
there
I
you
started
are.
it before the book went out, but I feel I've had a lot of fun, I
Mhm.
having conversations like this with people,
Yeah, it is. It is.
and I've had about 70 coaching clients already, and and a lot of people. I prepare these what I call selection universes.
Mhm.
So it's like a list of all the ones that I own and I look at for my own investing,
Mhm.
and I I sell that to people as like a monthly subscription. So
Mhm.
they can use that to do their research and determine which ones they actually want to buy for their own portfolios. And it allows them to see which ones are in AI, which ones are in healthcare, which
Hmm.
ones are here, there, the other way, where their interests are, so they can diversify properly and everything. So,
Now, is there an ideal client that you're looking for? Is there someone that you specifically, or is it kind of just open to people that want to learn? Because I want to make sure we're attracting the right
well,
people to your world.
I like to think that, I could do a Q&A session with somebody who just wants to learn more about investing, and it would be beneficial to them.
Mhm.
But if they're actual investors and they've got some money put away, or they're getting their annual bonus, for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but maybe they've had them coming in.
Mhm.
But people who've got six figures in their investment account and it's only making 2%, we can make 8%, so
Got it.
that
Got it.
type of thing. So
That's
it's a
so
wide range of people I think I can help, you
absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. All right, so the way I close out all the shows, Steve, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Let's say you're a college professor. There's a room full of incoming freshmen. They are kind of wet behind their ears. They just turned 18. They're now responsible for quote unquote adulting. Just pretend that all of them have come into the Zoom room. Just give them some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Oh boy.
And oh yeah, by the way, there's no time limit to it, so you can do your thing.
Yeah, but but here I am in a financial coach, so I'm talking people how to use their investment
Hmm.
money, and these kids that we're talking about probably don't have a whole lot of it.
Right.
So, what do you say to them? What do you say? In you're getting an education, and one of the things that you're going to find lacking, unless you happen to be a a business major,
Hmm.
is you're not going to learn anything about finance. And you probably don't know anything about finance from high school, because I certainly didn't get any education in that
Not
area.
either.
Yeah. So what you need to do is, even if it's not in your course curriculum or anything like that, you need to get yourself a couple books, and not just my book, okay, which would be helpful, but get yourself an economics book and a business book, and maybe even something about real estate,
Hmm.
just to read through so you understand what it's all about.
Right. Yes.
And that'll help you in the future, because eventually you're going to have money in your hand and you're going to need to invest it.
Yes.
And when somebody starts talking to you, you want to be able to understand what they're talking about, or even understand that they don't really understand what they're talking about. So,
Exactly. Yes. And that's why I put that situation because even though I said, 18-year-old kids, there's a lot of adults, grown adults who still haven't had access to this knowledge and they still need to just, again, educate yourself on investing, educate yourself on what you need to be doing, so you're at least putting something away for your family. And again, like the regular listeners are very used to hearing this term on this show, generational wealth. That is the big term around here in the Move Swiftly world. So with all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.